So folks, we got 34 new cards to talk about in this video. Some really cool designs, a couple crazy ones. And if you're a wild format player, a twist player, or a duels player, you might want to take a look at all these cards. But do keep in mind, for this Caverns of Time expansion, these will not be legal in standard. It has to be one of those supported formats. Those will arrive on August 31st in Wild and Duels, and on September 1st when the new season of Twist launches. For the context of this video, it's going to be part review, but frankly, it's going to be really hard to figure out how exactly these cards are going to work in Twist. And I'll be upfront about this. I don't think most of these cards are going to be good enough for Wild format. I am still not an expert in Wild format, but I did hit Legend in Wild this week in preparation for some of this content. And the mode is just so hyper fast and hyper synergistic that most cards that don't fit into an already really well established high win rate archetype and do it just like super quickly at low mana or cheating mana in some way probably aren't going to get played. So I don't think most of these cards are going to be disruptive in any way in Wild format. I think these were probably designed with the intent to be supported in Twist and shake up the Twist format here, which is not quite as powerful as Wild because it only runs from basically classic to mean streets of Gadget Sands. It's going to be a lower power format where some of these cards have a higher chance to succeed. So yeah, that said, let's still try to get some context on these cards, try to understand what we can about them, potential use cases, and so on. Up first here is Rat Sensei, a 2-mana 2/2 Battlecry and Death Rattle. Add 2 1/1 turtles with Taunt to your hand. That means in total you're going to get 4 1/1 turtles. Yes, that is a reference to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the tokens kind of look like the TMT King as well. So here, this is obviously a token druid support card, which there are definitely some token druids in Wild format, but they go so much faster than this card really supports. Basically, because you have to spend kind of 6 mana to get all of these 1/1s on board, and it's just going to take too long for all of that to unfold. You want to be playing 1-drops that are like, you know, Vicious Slither Spear, not 1/1 turtles. And you want to be overwhelming the opponent with power and stats that stick early. This just isn't going to be quick enough. The 1/1s just won't go far enough. In Twist format, Token Druid wasn't actually great in the mean streets of Gadget era. If we look back at meta reports from then, it was more about Jade Druids, and even those were only tier 3 at that stage. It took until like Frozen Throne for Jade Druid to get really good. So I don't even really think this card shows up a lot in Twist either, or is like fast enough or mana cheaty enough to compete with what you can do in either format. Like in Wild, when I played Mech Paladin to Legend, on turn 2, you have so much mana cheat with like Mech Warpers and Galvanizers and all this stuff. You can have a full board of giant mechs on turn 2 or turn 3. The Rat Sensei, it just can't keep up with all that mana cheat. So moving on to Invigorate, new 2-mana spell. This allows you to choose one, gain an empty mana crystal, or draw a card. So this is a wild growth with the ability to draw as well, which is pretty powerful. I think that actually has a really good chance to be good in Twist at setting up and enabling some of the Jade stuff. Having that flexibility could be nice. So this is still a little bit more immediately useful late in the game. I mean, Wild Growth used to be as well with the excess mana where you could draw, but this has bonus benefits with things like Cenarian Hold, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So it looks pretty good in Twist. In Wild format, I don't know, man. There are some like Miracle-y Druids. I didn't really run into those much, but just looking at deck lists, I see some of those. But I'm not even sure this looks fast enough. They mostly want really, really cheap 1-mana spells, and I don't know that Invigorate even is good enough in Wild for those sort of Miracle, Gadget and Auctioneer type druids either that empty their deck. So maybe still not good enough despite looking like an insane Wild Growth, which is kind of crazy to think about. Finally, Cenarian Hold, a 2-mana 2 durability location. Your next choose one card this turn has both effects combined, and that looks pretty cool, man. You play this out, hit some big stuff like Invigorates, Nourishes, of course, are classic examples for this. Being able to front load this mana cost and then pay it off with cards in future turns, even at full cost, seems to me like a really nice upside. So I think, again, this actually has pretty good potential in Twist. Probably still not good enough in Wild. I'm telling you, things are just so fast and so scary. Taking a pause on this card might not be worth it because you can just do so many things so quickly. Moving over to Hunter. This is this one's I'm not sure. We got Durnhold Imposter, a new 3-mana 3/3. Each turn this is in your hand, transform it into a random 3-cost minion that gains Poisonous. that just doesn't feel worth it to me. That is not driving any particular synergies. There's going to be all kinds of weird low rolls. These transform in hand cards traditionally haven't been great anyway. And finding the right moment of the right curve for this, it just seems like it's going to whiff too often. And spending 3 mana even on the best 3 mana poisonous card probably doesn't make any sense in Wild. And I'm not really sure it makes a lot of sense in Twist either. So next up are the Time Loss Raptors, which are cool. This is a really neat idea. Echo, Battlecry, adapt your Time Lost Raptors. They are 2 mana and 1/1 a piece. So, you know, getting multiple adapt effects, you can kind of fill your own turn with stuff. But ultimately, I just don't think these get big enough fast enough at that mana cost. Like 6 mana for 3 Raptors with, you know, some small stat buffs or keywords here or there. That's just not going to make much of an impact. Even in something like Twist, people are going to be making like giant Jade Idols when you're just like playing some silly 1/1s and stuff, and they'll just get too easily swept up in AoE. So I don't really see it for the Time Lost Raptors. We also have Trial of the Jormungers, a 5 mana spell. Summon copies of 2 beasts in your deck that cost 3 or less. So I'm sure there's some like interesting weird stuff possible with this. You know, you could do things like shuffle stuff into your deck that's been buffed or something and then pull it out of your deck. You know, there's like charge minions that I'm sure are possible with things like Trial of the Jormungers, but ultimately at 5 mana, again, that seems pretty costly and pretty slow. Even if they have things like charge, I'm not sure this makes sense as a real kind of reliable plan or finisher. As I look at these cards, I don't see a synergistic direction for these. I don't really see you know, like frankly in Twist or otherwise, it just seems like these are kind of hard to fit in and feel more like arena cards almost than they actually feel like constructed cards, which when you're talking about these extended formats with tons of cards in the pool, it just doesn't make sense. Maybe there's something I'm missing on this one. Chat, if you have YouTube comments, if you have cool ideas, like share what you can do with this. Maybe there's some way to break this I'm not envisioning, but even if there is, it's an expensive card in Wild. I'm telling you, most of my games in Wild ended before turn 5. I feel like I need to like show these stats. Yeah, here we go. These are my stats in Wild. I went 85-9 to Legend, a 90% win rate. My average game was 3.6 minutes long and 5.4 turns. But keep in mind, that means half my games were less than 5.4 turns long, roughly, right? So you just don't have time to play stuff. You gotta go, man. You gotta go. And that just doesn't seem like it goes to me. So Mage, we've got the Black Morass Imposter, new 2 mana 2/2. Each turn this is in your hand, transform it into a random 2-cost minion that gains spell damage +1. Which, again, these transform cards, it's a cool idea, right? Like traveling through time, seeing like the different eras and stuff. That's cool. Unless you hit another spell damage card, though, I don't think that's going to be very useful. Like you want that hyper synergy, and obviously the odds of that are very, very slim given how many random 2-drops there are going to be in any given pool. So I think just having generically different minions with spell damage is not going to make any sense to be worth it so much. Number 2 is the Disco at the End of Time, a 6 mana spell. Cast 5 random secrets of the past. At the start of your turn, destroy them. It's weird to say from the past in a Wild format or Twist expansion, which both have cards dating back to the start of Hearthstone, right? I guess it just means from this pool. I don't know. It's not showing up in Standard. I don't know what from the past actually means in this case. Does it mean pre-Karazhan? Because that's what this is from. I don't actually know. Either way, I feel like 6 mana is too much for this. Secret Mage is actually a really good deck in Wild, a really fast deck in Wild, but they're not paying 6 mana for spells like this for random secrets. Might make a little more sense in Twist with like Rito Mage was pretty good in the Mean Streets era. Spell like this can be disruptive, can kind of buy you a turn or whatever. I think that's still probably going to be a little pricey. There's going to be other ways to add survivability or kind of disruption than this card will suggest. Then finally, we've got Chromie Time Hopper, a 6 mana 4/4 Battlecry. Visit a historical epoch and shuffle the others into your deck. Now, obviously, this is not showing what the epochs are, but lucky for you, I have the epochs handy. Sorry, this isn't the most beautiful setup. Opening the Dark Portal, get 2 random legendary minions. So I think one of these will cast automatically when you play the Chromie, and the rest will get shuffled into your deck. That's what the cast when drawn effect is for. Give your minions +2/+2. get 2 random spells and deal 2 damage to all enemies. So sometimes AoE, sometimes random value, sometimes board buff. So about half the time you get random value, half the time you want to be playing it proactively with a board, half the time you want to be playing it reactively against your opponent's board. But ultimately, 6 mana is outrageously expensive for a card like this. I think you're probably gonna get to pick from the 4, even though it doesn't really say discover. Visit kind of implies to me you're gonna get to choose, so that's helpful if that's true. Like, you know, you get the AoE when you need it, but it's just really expensive again at 6 mana, man. That's a lot. Definitely not in wild format. Forget it. That's not even remotely worth it. Reno Mage might be able to make room for that. Now, that is a really cool card. I love the design of that, but all of these numbers to me, I feel like need to be bumped up to really make sense and be competitive. Moving over to Paladin, we've got 4-mana spell here, Timeless Blessing. Give 4 random minions in your hand, +4/+4, +3/+3, +2/+2, and +1/+1. So 4 distinct buffs there. So some pretty crazy hand buff action. And hand buff Paladin, you got like a couple other buffs in the list of buffed cards. But spending 4 mana on stats like this that are delayed, man, again, I hate to be a downer, but I just don't see it. Handbuff Paladin was a tier 4 deck in Mean Streets of Gadgetzan era, so maybe something like this could fit in nicely in Twist, but I still think 4 mana is going to feel really expensive. Again, when you're in a meta with like Jade Idols, for instance, your opponent's going to be adding and scaling stats on board pretty quickly. You having to spend mana to set those up later and then play them out, and they're just sitting there passively very often. I don't think that's going to be fast enough, or these are really going to be enough stats. This is a very like cost efficient sort of play, but it's not a very time efficient sort of play, and then it takes a while to potentially unload all of these stats, even if you ran them on really small minions. Maybe there's something cool with charge minions. If you're running a bunch of like Argent Horse Riders or whatever, you could get enough buffs on your charge minions to help you end games with that sort of lethality, but I'm afraid you'll die in the meantime. Your opponent won't be just killing you on board while you're playing around with your silly stats in hand. So next up is the Bronze Dragon Knight, 4 mana, 3/5 dragon. Battlecry, this has 5 or more attacks. Summon a copy of this. So this is a little bit of a hand buff payoff card, which I think does feel a little better because you're getting some decent tempo out of this. Way too slow in Wild still. Forget it. Not good enough in Wild. But in Twist, this makes a little more sense to me. I like that it's getting the stats down quicker, but these are the same cost. Like, if we were playing Timeless Blessing on 3 and then Bronze Dragon Knight on 4, I'd be a lot happier. But instead, they're occupying the same spot, which means your Dragon Knight's either coming down late, you gotta have the coin, or something else if you're trying to support these together. So that's an odd decision to me, but I still think it's going to be tough, and I don't think this is going to be a top meta deck, but it might be okay. Finally, we got Rooney Time Explorer, a 3 mana 3/4 battlecry. Discover a location from the future. And again, I happen to have these handy, and there are a lot of these actually. It's kind of crazy how many of these there are. So do keep in mind, you're just discovering these. You got to spend the mana on them afterwards. This is Outskirts of Lordaeron. Choose a minion. Destroy all minions with less attack than it. So actually potentially a cool kind of little board clear. You got the Rooney on board if you're playing this all at once. You can clear small stuff. Windrider Roost. Summon a random 3-cost minion and give it charge. So if you need some pressure or finisher, some potential there. Not ultimately a lot of damage, but keep in mind this has 2 durability, right, both times. So maybe the second one helps you get more value and stats out of that. Zinadar, this looks cool. Your next battlecry this turn triggers twice. That's kind of a neat idea, little brand you can guarantee for later, so you don't have to spend the mana on brand. That's cool. Is that going to be worth 6 mana setup with this card? I'm not so sure. Also keep in mind, you can't guarantee to get this because there's enough locations that you're not always going to get the one that you want. So for like a combo specifically, you might actually just miss it sometimes. The Nighthold's going to cost 3 random Paladin Secrets. Paladin Secrets aren't great. I'm not in love with that. Valdraken gets you 2 random dragons with +2/+2. So bit of a value generator for this one. It's okay if you're going into a long grindy game, but in my experience, Wild definitely doesn't have a lot of long grindy games. So, maybe you could see this in like a Reno deck that just needs to fill space, which is always a possibility for something like Twist. But ultimately, again, Wild, no chance I think that this card sees any kind of play. Twist, Paladin doesn't really seem to have a really distinct direction or like really strong meta contender that I can tell. I don't know that this fixes that, but maybe a random Reno deck or something runs this fine. Moving on to Priest here, we've got Shadow Word Forbid, a new tradable, destroy a 4-attack minion, corrupt, destroy all 4-attack minions. So this is a really specific, like shoring up some gaps in the history of Priest's removal. Unfortunately, it's just so specific. I don't know that it makes any sense, man. You're going to want a lot more flexibility probably than this sort of card provides. It's got corrupt and tradable, which is cool, seeing all these keywords together. Tradable helps, but this is such a specific keyword that even when it's like trading off, it seems too narrow to me in focus. We've got the Ship's Chirurgeon. Chirurgeon. It's like a surgeon. I don't know what that word means. Maybe that's a fantasy word I'm just unfamiliar with. A 1-mana 1/2 dragon pirate. After you summon a minion, give it +1 health. So actually, I think a really neat little kind of aggro support kind of card. I just don't know that Priest is going to be able to make a huge advantage of that. I did run into a pirate Priest while playing Wild that kind of smacked me in the face pretty hard. A card like this could be good, but I think you probably want more raw aggression out of it. I don't know if that 1 health adds enough survivability to make it worth it. I mean, this does pull out of patches right away as a pirate, so that helps a little bit to buff your patches immediately. It's a pretty good foundation to build the board on. I would maybe keep an eye on this one for Wild. I don't think it's going to be great, but more possible than most of the cards we've seen in this video. We've also got Murazond, Thief of Time. We saw previewed in the previous patch notes post. 7-mana 6/6 dragon. If your deck has no duplicates, discover a dragon, deal damage equals its cost to all other minions. I actually think this card looks pretty dang good for Twist. We saw the Dragon Priest was a pretty good deck in that era. Actually had a lot of viability, and this feels like a great sort of swing card, stabilizer card for that deck that's already hoping to play to some higher mana costs, being able to, often remove like 9/9s and stuff can be useful in a meta where, like, going into turn 6, turn 7, the opponent's already stacking up some big 5/5s and 6/6 Jades and stuff. This could be a great way to swing that back into your favor. For Wild format, I doubt this is worth it. Number one, the Discover pool just gets worse and worse, and it's often a lot of smaller stuff when we talk about Wild formats. You're not going to hit the best stuff. Also keep in mind, though, for Twist and in general for these formats, Discover used to be really good in that era because it had a class bias. You were more likely to discover class cards. It's not so true these days. We removed the class bias. So Discover is going to feel weaker even in that like Mean Streets of Gadgetzan era than it did in that era originally for Twist. So some of the stuff, like your I can't remember his name, the stupid 5/6 dragon guy that was so good and so meta defining, the Draconid operative, right, may not actually feel as good. No, that was Discover a card in your opponent's deck anyway. Never mind, he'll feel fine. He'll feel fine. But generally speaking, the Discover stuff might be weaker. That said, I actually think this card looks pretty good. One of the better Twist cards for sure. Moving on to Rogue, we've got the Mount Hyjal Imposter, a new 4-mana 4/4. Each turn this is your hand. Transform it into a random 4-cost minion that gains stealth. Again, just not going to make sense. You need reliability. You need really specific game plans. That doesn't match. The Jade Telegram looks kind of cool. Look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand and shuffle one of them into their deck. Summon a Jade Golem. Now, Jade Rogue was definitely not the go-to Jade stuff. Back then, we were still playing Miracle Rogue pretty successfully in Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. Certainly in Wild format, Jade Rogue doesn't even come close to competing. But in Twist, this is a really good card, right? Not only do you get to remove value from your opponent's hand and also potentially really disrupt their hand if you remove the right thing out of their hand. That can be very good, but also just an extra density of Jade Golem cards. That's intriguing to me. Maybe this is enough to help actually enable Jade Rogue, which would be pretty cool to see, but again, only in Twist. Finally, the Scarab Lord. This is an awesome card for old school Warcraft players. I remember fondly getting the Scarab Lord title for our guild. Not me personally, our main tank got it, but we were the driving force on the Encourage efforts on our server, so this brings back some nice nostalgia and fond memories. It is a 4-mana 3/3 Battlecry. Summon a 0/2 Gong for your opponent and combo gain Rush. If you want to see the Gong, here it is. It's basically you summon it for your opponent. After it takes damage, you fill your opponent's board with 1/1 Scarab. So you can use this if you combo it to actually get a really nice board of 1/1s, which it's kind of intriguing. Rogue doesn't always have the best ways to pay off those sorts of boards, but if you're comboing anyway, it might just be a really easy, quick way to just gain a lot of stats, basically. Or you could just set it up for later too, you know, with a weapon or whatever. You don't have to scare board it right now. So like on turn 5, just get a big nice free board of 1/1s basically. This is kind of a cool idea. That's the sort of play that's decisive and big, so I would definitely keep an eye on that one for Twist. Still not good enough in Wild. Shaman, we get the Pebbly Page, a 2-mana 2/1 elemental. Battlecry, draw an overload card. You can't be overloaded this turn. I think that's actually kind of halfway decent. Let me look at real quickly what Shaman is playing in Wild. I don't really remember running into that many Shamans, to be honest, in my Wild climb. Shaman, oh, I actually did run into a lot of even Shaman, but that's more totem stuff and totem synergies, but this card would not fit very well. There are also some Spirit of the Frog Shamans, but they have so much built-in draw and spell-based packages that this doesn't really make sense either, although I didn't run into a single Spirit of the Frog Shaman on my climb. So, I don't know, man. This probably doesn't make a lot of sense in Wild, even though it looks like a really efficient sort of card that might. And it's also synergistic for Overload, which is cool, but not good enough. Now, that said, in Twist format, Shaman has a chance to be the #1 go-to deck because we have, like, aggro and mid-range Shamans were really good when complemented by Jades in that era. And they could just, you know, Tunnel Trog you and Jade you to death, basically. There are some Overload cards in those decks, so I wouldn't be totally shocked if the efficiency of this card finds it a home. Like, there wasn't always super efficient card draw in that era, so it's definitely a possibility. Totally Totems. Now, this card actually scared a lot of people because this actually looks pretty decent for Wild. As I mentioned, even Shaman is a good deck that relies on summoning totems really quickly. Getting 5 totems out for your even deck can actually help you build out some of those crazy synergy cards like Thing from Below and the Gigantotem even faster to really swing a board. So this card might be one of the scariest cards in this entire video. You know, it doesn't sound great necessarily to spend 4 mana just to get 5 kind of empty totems, but given the synergies and payoffs that exist for that deck, kind of scary. I don't think that's going to be good in Twist, though. Ironically, the card that's best in Wild probably won't be good enough in Twist. And then finally, we're getting a new hero card, which is so freaking cool. Alakir, the Winds of Time. New 7-mana hero card. Battlecry, draw Charge, Divine Shield, Taunt, and Wind Fury minion. So we also, of course, want to see Alakir's hero power. If you'll give me just one moment. Where is Shaman? Here we go. Shaman, swat insects. Give your hero Divine Shield. They gain +2 attack and Wind Fury this turn, which getting Wind Fury is actually kind of insane because, of course, if you have any attack buffs, that becomes really lethal in no time. A single Rock Biter weapon makes that 5 attack, twice 10 damage, which is crazy, and we're gonna have Rock Biter weapon available in Twist in particular. So this card actually looks to me pretty strong. I'm shocked at just how scary this one looks. I think still maybe too slow and Wild, which I hate that to be the thing to say, but it's true. If you play Wild format, you'll agree with me. It's not some secret. There are some like Shutterwalk Shamans in Wild that might have room for something like this, but I don't know if it offers enough survivability bonus. But it does offer like card draw. Obviously, you could draw a lot of different things with this sort of thing if you line up the right sort of packages. But in Twist, this actually looks like it could be a powerhouse finisher in Twist. Shaman already looks like it has the potential to be good in Twist. Card like this probably fits in fine in Twist no matter what. We hadn't even seen hero cards yet at this stage, I guess, in that Twist era, because we hadn't gotten to Knights of the Frozen Throne yet. So, and remember, Jiraxis was still a minion in that time. So this might actually be one of the best cards in Twist, I have a feeling. Looks like a great finisher. So moving over to Warlock, there's only 2 cards here because they also got a reworked card, which we'll scroll down and talk about. First up is Chamber of Vicitus, a 2-mana 3 durability location. Look at 3 cards in your hand, choose one to discard, and draw 2 cards. This actually looks great to me. Discard synergies can be awesome, just helping you find the right thing, cheat it into play. Actually, in duels, this kind of looks terrifying, and then also getting cards out of it and getting to do that multiple times throughout the mid game looks really, really good here for the Chamber. So you're not even necessarily sacrificing much tempo in a discard deck here, because you can just get a body out of this if you hit or some other good kind of reactive discard line. So I didn't run into any discard Warlock on my Wild format climb, but I have a feeling that's the kind of deck that's maybe not too far off. You can do some pretty fast things in discard decks. So I don't know if this would ever get it into meta relevance in Wild, but something to keep in mind. I do think, though, there's a chance Twist benefits from this pretty well. I don't know. We saw the Silverware Golem getting buffed. I don't think Discard Warlock was good in that particular era of Mean Streets, but again, that's not going to be exactly what the meta looks like. So definitely a solid card, though. I'd keep an eye on that. Duels actually looks nuts. Witch of the Archthief is a new 4-mana 2/4 battlecry. Summon a 1/3 Voidwalker with Taunt. If your opponent has more minions, repeat, which is basically Spreading Plague, but at 4 mana and for Warlock. And I actually think that has a chance to be good in both formats. We see Reno Warlock show up in Wild as one of the better decks, and I think this actually fits. It's just a great way to slow down some of those aggressive boards. Like I talked about, like Mech Paladin, for instance. Sometimes you just need a breather setting up for a Defile, getting to your Reno, whatever it is. And a card like this is very disruptive and punishes some of those early swarm sort of boards. Even if the 1/3s are relatively easily traded into and removed, it's more about buying that time into your next turn and into your next play, which this card seems like it does really well. So this again looks like one of the better cards potentially in both formats here. Witch of the Archthief seems quite good potentially. Now also for Warlock, we're getting a rework to Cho'Gall. He's going to be a discard support card. He's an 8-mana 8/8. Return all cards you discarded this game to your hand. They cost health instead of mana. So this can be kind of like a big final push for a discard Warlock. 8 mana in Wild seems a little too late, a little too expensive. You're not going to have a ton of bonus health to work with very often in that sort of environment. But I'm intrigued again by discard in Twist. I think it has some possibilities. So moving on over to Warrior, we got Blast from the Past, a 3-mana spell. Get 2 spare parts, summon 2 1/1 Boombots, and shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. Now, I don't think we had really a lot of great bomb stuff happening yet in the Twist era here. In Wild format, Bomb Warrior is not a deck I've run into or seen or thought about in my climb, so I don't think this will really give a boost to Wild. It doesn't seem good enough in that case. And Twist, I don't know if there's enough density of bomb cards to be worth it. You might think in a regular Warrior deck, though, there's just enough happening here. Like, you know, you get a board, you get some upside later, you get some spare parts. Maybe that's okay for like even a Control Warrior to run, just a little stopgap sort of card in the meantime. I'd keep an eye on this one in Twist. We've also got the Ivory Rook, a 4-mana 4/4 battlecry. Discover a taunt minion and gain armor equal to its cost. So again, a decent little like Control Warrior sort of card, I'd say. Get some defensive utility, get some armor immediately. Discover again's actually relatively weak, and there are a lot of low cost discovers, so I don't think you're gonna feel like this hits home runs, but you know, maybe getting 3 to 5 armor fairly often as a floor is possible out of the Ivory Rook. And I don't know if that feels great, but it probably doesn't feel terrible. I think compared to some of the like Cthulhu stuff that's going to be happening though, potentially this may not keep up. Like, we're going to talk more about Cthulhu stuff here in a second. You know, there's like, you know, the armor bearer type stuff in Warrior, if that's the name of that card. Just gains you like 10 armor, for instance, might be the way to go for something like this. Oh, also for Warrior here, we got Hobart Grapple Hammer getting a rework. 4-mana 2/2. If you have a weapon equipped, give all minions in your hand and deck +2/+2. So this is kind of a Kel'Thuzad effect for Warrior. It is definitely a little bit more expensive at 4 mana, but I don't know, man. That's still a lot of big stats in Twist in particular. Wild, too slow. Comes down too late. I hate to say that 1,000 times, but it's just true. In Twist, though, you know, we did see Kel'Thuzad come along after this in that era of Hearthstone and make a big impact. So is 4 mana too late for that to come along? I think it's actually still intriguing as an idea to kind of grind people out with stats in the mid game. The fact that it hits hand and deck is a nice benefit, so you're not sacrificing the quality of your hand too much for this one. So interesting. I think intriguing. Moving on to neutral, finally here, our last set of cards, we've got the Shark Puncher, 2-mana 2/2 pirate. Death Rattle will give a random friendly pirate +2/+2. Pirate is pretty good in Wild. I saw a lot of pirate rogues in particular. There's also some pirate stuff in Twist, I think is fairly likely, like Pirate Warrior. I do worry about this one, though, that your opponent's going to have kind of the luxury of trading in on this when they want. But, you know, if you're jostling for board early and you get a Shark Puncher down, you can play a pirate behind this. It's not bad to trade up those stats. Possibility for pirate decks, just not in Wild. Timeline Accelerator, 3-mana 2/2 battlecry, draw a mech. It costs 2 less. This is not good enough for like Mech Paladin in Wild. This is just too slow. They have Radar Detector to draw a bunch and mana cheat that goes across entire hands, not for a single mech. So not good enough, and probably not too relevant in Twist either by my estimations. Future Emissary is a 4-mana 4/4 dragon. Battlecry, reduce the cost of all dragons in your hand by 1 and give them +1/+1. This actually looks insane for Dragon Priest and Twist, and maybe might even enable dragon decks for other classes as well. So definitely keep this one in mind. I don't still think good enough in Wild, despite actually having some mana cheat. I think Priest just has plans other than dragons that feel better, but a good card. I think this is one of the more interesting cards in this set. We got the Jug and Mug from Battlegrounds showing up here. The Mug is a 3-mana 2/2. The Jug is a 5-mana 3/3. These support menagerie sorts of game plans. I think these are just way too hard to get rolling and get consistently. We are getting like a new amalgam here, which is kind of cool. Like these all sort of go together, but relies too much on things sticking around to really pay off, which I think is often unlikely. The Infinite Amalgam is a 4-mana 4/4 all type. It's got all these like random keywords: Inspire, Frenzy, Spellburst, Honorable Kill, and Overkill. Summon a random 1-cost minion. So I want to see this here where somebody does all of these in one turn. I think, you know, ultimately, like, yes, you can get a full board out of this in the right scenarios, but most of these are actually the worst keywords and very hard to line up. This is like the bad keyword card. Spellburst was a pretty good keyword. Frenzy's okay, but some of these are pretty hard to pull off, so that just looks clunky to me. Next up is the Eye Stalk of Cthulhu. Taunt and Lifesteal. Whenever your Cthulhu gains attack or health, this does too. We saw this earlier in that previous blog post. This actually looks really good. Having a giant wall of defensive lifesteal Cthulhu cards makes sense, and it's another way to pay off all your Cthulhu scalers, which sometimes felt like they were too slow setting up for that big Cthulhu. Cthulhu's also going to be 8 mana, which is insane, and a lot of the Cthulhu support cards got buffs in various ways. So I do think Cthulhu as an archetype in Twist is going to be good. I still don't trust it in Wild. I think 8 mana for Cthulhu in Wild is a little clunky, and a lot of the Cthulhu cards won't feel very good to play along the way. But in Twist, this could definitely be a meta tyrant sort of card. This looks really good. Next up is Valston's Staghelm, a 6-mana 3/6. Death Rattle, summon a taunt minion from your deck, which is actually pretty cool with the Eye Stalk of Cthulhu. Like, that could just be a great way to find this and have a bunch of stats on it, which is pretty cool. There might also be some interesting ways to break this in Wild. There are so many different taunt minions that you might be able to cheat out with some kind of cool effect or bonus upside for a combo. It is a 6-mana card though, so it's going to be, I think, fairly niche in application. And then finally we have Sorry Dormi, a 5-mana 8/8 dragon. It's dormant for 2 turns, and then when it awakens, it reduced the cost of all dragons in your hand by 4, which is a crazy big reduction. Might actually work with some crazy stuff like Malygos, like use this to discount a Malygos and then, you know, pop off or something. There's some neat ideas with this given the significance of its cost reduction, particularly in Twist. It feels like, can you do something cool and find some crazy line with this? I like that it creates those possibilities because the numbers on it are big enough to make exciting things happen. I'm sure it'll be great in Wild for like shenanigans and crazy combos, maybe not opening up super consistent stuff in Wild. Otherwise, you need to be able to turn this into a finisher, because that's happening. You know, this is a 5-mana play, dormant for 2 turns. It's happening pretty late in the game to really make a swing. So that is it for the cards. There are also some cool new like signature cards. I'll link this blog post in the description. Some of these like kind of murally art stuff for the old gods, which is really cool. Murals is not the right word, you know what I mean? Like old like, you know, sculptures on the wall of old temples or something. These like cool like anime, I don't know if anime is the right word either, but cartoon, kind of anime cartoon League of Explorers look awesome. Just some cool like timed themey Mean Streets cards, you know, old gangsters. This Patches is ridiculous. This Tyrion just looks epic. Cenarius looks epic. So these are going to be in the Caverns of Time packs as well as old school packs too. So I'm sure some people will spend a lot of money chasing these down, which Blizzard will love. I think they look cool, but I will not be spending a ton of money. So there you go, guys. Those are the cards. I know it sort of sounded like I said a lot of the times that these aren't going to be very good in Wild. I think that's true. That said, I'm still not a Wild expert. Yes, I hit Legend in Wild, but I played one deck. It went so fast. I don't really feel like I learned that much other than just how crazy fast Wild can be. But that is an important takeaway. That is still important knowledge. So please feel free to share additional thoughts, additional insights, some cool combos. I'm definitely not going to be able to be familiar with every single combo that exists every single possibility. You know, I'm thinking, is there something cool you could do with Trial of the Jormungers I haven't thought of? Maybe. I want to hear those. So share all that in the comments below. Thanks much, as always, for watching me ramble about cards. Ultimately, I do want to try to play some of these, have some fun with this stuff in both Wild and Twist. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Appreciate you. And until next time, game on.